Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Minds, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we begin each week of our Top 10s by saying hello to my two co-hosts. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, you made it through the card order thing in one take.
Uno take. Sometimes it takes more than one.
It's good work out of you. You're a
Really
professional.
does.
That's right. Do this. Ruben Bressler, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. So, and you're okay, yes? For those who are
Oh
curious.
yeah, I'm fine. I was I of course live in Las Vegas, and the incidents that happened a couple days ago occurred. I was at work at the Wynn, which, if you know your Las Vegas geography, is several miles from the shooting location on the south side of the strip. But I was locked down at my job while I was on shift, which was interesting.
Jesus.
We weren't allowed to leave the building. When I finally got off work, I had to take a different route home because the strip was closed.
Wow.
And so that was something else for sure. I don't think it's really fully processed in my brain yet exactly how close I was to that, but I am perfectly fine, and never, I personally, and I don't think any of my friends that I know of were in any danger.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Athena said that all the Magic players she knew from the area, between her and Eric Froelich, were all accounted for and fine.
I will say one of the guys that I play Werewolf with regularly is a well-known Instagram celebrity named Dan Bilzerian, who was at the concert and recorded himself running away from gunshots. So while I don't hang out with him all the time, I do see him maybe 2-3 times a month, and yeah, he was there. So
Wow.
a little scary, certainly. But for me personally, this is I don't need anybody's help or anything like that. And I'll be once the lines are a little shorter and I don't have to wait in line for actual 18 hours, which I'm very proud of my city for this. I will be giving blood later this week, obviously, but the lines are out the door and around the block at everywhere you can give blood in Las Vegas.
That's great.
Yeah.
And we're glad to hear that you're okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, man. So we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a little segment we call Honorable Mention, for which the person who receives the honorable mention or points us out to their honorable mention will get a free $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. And Ruben, as the one who administrates said honorable mentions, what you got for us this week?
This week's honorable mention is Michael B., who wrote, "As an avid Commander player, I feel like the best card you missed was Aura Shards. It was never really played in any format that I'm aware of, but when I lay this thing down when I'm playing my green-white decks in Commander, I love the looks of despair in my opponent's eyes as they look at all the mana rocks and combo pieces I can destroy simply by playing my dudes. I tend to be firmly planted in the Timmy spectrum, so it gives me great joy to land White Sun Zenith in response to removal aimed at my Aura Shards. Hands down my favorite green-white card that didn't make your lists."
Rude.
Wow.
Yeah, Aura Shards is one of those cards that whenever I'm walking past a game of Commander, I always make sure that it's like where it is on the battlefield. It's one of those things that just always has a huge impact. I did play it in Constructed for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
It was very difficult to fit into that particular metagame, but Aura Shards is a great choice.
It is something like anywhere from a $10 to $14 uncommon.
Yeah.
Wow.
That card is real. They've only printed it twice in Invasion and Commander. For those who don't know, it's a green and a white and a generic mana for an uncommon enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. You have Naturalize and or Disenchant, however you want their flavor there. Right. Every time you play a guy. You play a dork and it kills something.
Fabulous.
Not a bad drag name. Just.
All right, we'll get started here with number 10. Aaron, what is your number 10?
This list posed some challenges for me as per the definition of modal. When I first started building this list, I had a Demonic Pact on my list, and I had Jit on my list, because those technically have modes to them, but from based on MTG Salvation, or I think it's called Gamepedia now, whatever it is. Modal means that you have to choose the mode when you resolve the spell. So 2 of the cards I had on my list I had to replace at very much the last minute, but this card was not one of them. This card was on my original top 10. This is the first time we had ever seen a colorless version of this spell before, to my knowledge. And I was really, really excited to see this. I was surprised to see that it even had eternal implications. I saw it pop up in Legacy, which is not good for me because you can use it to exile my bridges, which is always a sad time. My number 10 is Warping Whale. So for those who are playing along at home, Warping Whale costs 1 and a Wingding, which specifically has to be the colorless mana from the Battle for Zendikar block. It's an instant, and you can choose one. You can either exile a creature with power or toughness 1 or less. You can get rid of your Deathrite Shamans. You can get rid of your Baby Jaces, things of that nature. Again, things you want to you worry about in Eternal. Baleful Strix is another one. Or you can counter a sorcery, which if you're playing against the Storm decks like Ant, you can get rid of a Tendrils of Agony that's coming your way. Or you can put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature onto the battlefield, which has sacrificed this creature, add a Wingding to your mana pool, like the Scions tend to have, that little ramp ability. And so this was something that came out in Standard. It was really, really unique, and slowly but surely, I started seeing it in Modern, I started seeing it in Legacy. I don't recall seeing it in Vintage, but I wouldn't rule it out. Especially in the shops decks where you're able to make a lot of colorless mana. And the art's kind of nifty as well. And so that's my number 10.
It's good and weird. And clearly, we should have had a guide as to what a modal spell was, because I've kind of violated the rule, and I didn't know, and we didn't know.
Same.
We should have talked about it, but I don't think we talked. You know, it's weird. Sometimes we make mistakes.
We didn't really decide. I mean, the one thing that we decided on it is we did not include split cards, even though technically those are modal. When you cast them, you have to choose which side of the split card, but we'll probably get to top 10 split cards at some point at a later date. But yeah.
So don't worry. I think that your choices may or may not, probably may absolutely show up in our
And
houses.
Warping Whale itself showed up in Legacy because it's a great counter to Terminus for any of the decks in Legacy that are trying to, like the Cloud Post decks that put in big Eldrazi's, or anything that can produce a colorless mana. I mean, even a Wasteland produces a colorless mana. I saw this in
a Goblins deck, and I was like, why?
Nice. Cast it off your Cavern of Souls.
It also counters Show and Tell. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, Warping Whale, a good, fun, sort of very much, it has different implications in different formats, in different ways. I don't think it really did that much in Standard, if at all.
No, not really.
But older formats, it gets really exciting. Ruben, what is your number 10?
My number 10 might be the most recent card to appear on any of our top 10 lists. My number 10 is Abrade, presently in Standard.
Very nice.
Colorless and a red, instant. Choose one, deal 3 damage to target creature, or destroy target artifact. This was my number 1 card from Hour of Devastation, if you recall. And it's panned out. This is exactly what Red needed. This is Red's Disenchant. It is able to handle a lot of the problems that you need. It started sneaking up in other formats as well. It's a high-picking cube these days. It's starting to see play in Modern and in Legacy. It's certainly a 4-of in multiple types of different decks in Standard. It is exactly what Red has always needed. Especially those mid-range red decks, when the targeting 3 damage to the face isn't nearly as important as being instant speed or being able to deal with a Torrential Gearhulk or something like that. So Abrade is my number 10.
Wow. I mean, they've reprinted Shatter all the way up through Khans of Tarkir. I mean, Shatter has been sort of the spell, and Shatter is a red and a generic mana for an instant that destroys target artifact. Period. And usually a lot of flavor text because there's nothing else in the box, and they got to fill it with words. And so Abrade is like, no, we have either the chocolate or the peanut butter, and together we can have whichever one we want whenever we want. It's card freaking. It's so wonderfully efficient. It was one of those where I was like, man, this is so new. I feel like we haven't even seen this entire impact yet.
Correct.
Like it's just getting started.
And it could be higher on the list if we had done this show 3 to 6 months from now, but right now it sneaks into the top 10 because I think it does deserve a top 10 spot.
Absolutely. So I'm going to, I'm going to keep it weird and certainly not to the, I guess, strict definition of modal with my very first pick here, my number 10. My number 10 is from Guild Pact, and it's a weird one because it uses the haunt mechanic. Orzhov Pontiff is a monster, awesome spell of like things that you can do and manipulate. It's a black, a white, and a generic mana for a 1/1 human cleric. It's a rare. And it has Haunt. When this card is put into a graveyard from play, you remove it from the game, haunting target creature. Haunting got weird, but stay with me here. When it comes into play or the creature it haunts is put into a graveyard, you choose one. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, or creatures you don't control get -1/-1 until end of turn. This was monstrous, not only against token decks, but with token decks. It was sort of one of those, there was a black-white token deck, and they kind of sort of played off each other, because this is a way for you to wipe their board if they have the advantage, or for you to pump your board if you're trying to do an alpha strike. Like, Pontiff, Orzhov Pontiff just kind of did everything. It showed up in Modern. It's done a lot of work. Just really sort of, again, +1/+1 is not all that great. -1/-1 is not all that great. But when you give the option, when you put it into the trigger, when you're able to do the haunt stuff, and you're able to sort of manipulate it the way you want, Orzhov Pontiff really, really shines. And I love this card a lot.
Yeah, Orzhov Pontiff is key in the old Birthing Pod mirrors and also the Collected Company mirrors. So when you have, I mean, it's not very good against any of the other decks, but in the mirror match of the most popular deck during its life cycle, the Birthing Pod deck, and sometimes the Coco deck was also the most popular. This card was extremely potent, being able to give -1/-1 to your opponent's Birds of Paradise, or their Vizier of Remedies, or their Noble Hierarchs, exactly. And then -2/-2 sometimes if you're able to untap your own Birthing Pod and sacrifice whatever it haunted. A lot of the times you would sacrifice a 2-drop and go get a Deceiver Exarch to untap your things. Stuff like that happened. Or if you had 2 pods in play, you could sacrifice the Pontiff and then sacrifice whatever the Pontiff was haunting. Yeah, great choice. Love it. It has that long dash in there, so I'm counting it as a modal spell.
Yeah, it was on my initial top 10 as well, and I have walked into this card a number of times against the Coco decks. People also like to chord for this card against the Kiki chord, kind of decks. I can't tell you how many times I've swung in thinking I have the game, and they chord into this, and then my board full of Narcomoebas and Bloodcasts looks really darn pitiful after that. And yeah, the card is just a monster, and it looks, we people usually don't have anything nice to say about Haunt, but that's the one card that you can usually make an exception for.
Right.
Yeah, I personally liked Haunt, even though it
holds off a Splinter Twin Deceiver Exarch alpha as well. They attack you with a billion 1/4s, and then you're like, Orzhov Pontiff, untap, attack you, and kill you. So that's like a nice little corner case.
That's fantastic. So we're going to move on here to number 9. And so already we've spoken of weird cards that I guess don't exactly fit things. I've already started with Pontiff, so let's keep on going.
Sure.
My number 9 is Demonic Pact. And Demonic Pact, as Aaron will know and will enjoy, is a super weirdo card that when it showed up, it's so wonderfully unique. It's just, there's nothing that's done what it's done. It is a mythic enchantment from Magic Origins for 2 black and 2 generic mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. I love that phrase. Yep. Demonic Pact deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards, draw 2 cards, or you lose the game. I love that. That's fantastic. When it showed up, everyone was just kind of sort of skittish. They're like, is this busted? Did they bust things? And you're like, well, I mean, I guess if you do a thing and you can return it to your hand with a bounce spell and then you manipulate it and blah, blah, blah. And it even showed up at the Pro Tour and everyone just lost their minds there for like 10 minutes. Ended up not being that great, but it was certainly one of the coolest, most exciting decks at the time, and really one of the most interesting sort of modal pick your poison, even if that poison kills you.
Yeah, it had some. It saw some GP play, specifically with the release of Harmless Offering. The ability to literally donate the card to somebody just as they're about to die. I picked up Cat Pack shortly after its big appearance at the GP. I think Chris Botello was the young man that everybody was rooting for. Showed up to the GP with Cat Pack, and he's still sort of riding that claim to fame. He was sort of the Cat Pack guy. I killed people with it. It's fantastic, but just more or less the flavor of it. Origins was supposed to be the set that gave you the background on Jace and Chandra and Nissa and things like that. And so, you see Lily in the art. These are literally the packs that she made, where you make your packs and eventually you got to pay for it. And it's also very Black to sort of pass that on, to sort of to get away from your dirty deeds that you did, and to say, okay, yeah, I made all these deals, but I'm going to find a way around. I'm going to find a loophole and live to die another day. And I just love it.
That's awesome. Ruben, what is your number 9?
My number 9 won a Pro Tour. was probably the best of its cycle, although all of them have sort of seen some amount of play. It has the word charm in its name, which is the classic modal spell thing. My number 9 is Abzan Charm.
Ooh.
So a white, a black, and a green for an instant uncommon from Khans of Tarkir. Exile target creature with power 3 or greater, or you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. Extremely powerful, extremely versatile, kind of the glue, like the rug that holds the room together for the best deck at the time, the Abzan Siege Rhino decks.
Yeah.
It's able to exile opponent's Siege Rhinos, make your Siege Rhinos bigger if they happen to get in a tussle, or if you're in the long, grindy, section of the game where nothing is able to stay on the board, drawing 2 cards, losing 2 life. 2 life usually not that relevant. Very powerful, very potent, and has the word charm right in its name. I wonder how many charms we're going to have total in our top list. But Abzan Charm certainly deserving of a mention here.
Yeah, Abzan Charm having such amazing versatility, it kind of answered all of its own problems. It was like, oh, there's Siege Rhino. Okay, here, whatever. Well, you're super mid-rangey. All right, well, you can go draw some cards. Well, there's a lot of weird combat when you're super mid-rangey. Okay, great. I can just manipulate that too. It's just it did everything you wanted it to do in all 3 of the options.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so versatile because everything in Magic is a card, right? So drawing 2 cards is great. That's just classic card advantage. And usually when you need to draw extra cards, your life total doesn't really matter. And then it gives you 2 ways to deal with things on the battlefield, either dealing extra damage to your opponent or exiling, which was a huge deal at the time, being able to actually exile the permanent instead of just destroying it like something with Hero's Downfall or what have you. Abzan Charm, just a cornerstone of the Abzan mid-range mirror matches and Abzan dominating that format.
All right, so Aaron, what is your number 9?
I'm still keeping it weird, man. I have a lot more weird to go around. My number 9, just from the art alone, deserves to be on this list. I can't say enough about it. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. My number 9 is Plunge into Darkness.
Nice.
When you look at this card, it's a guy ripping off his own face. You just see this dude. You see this really buff dude putting his hands into his face, maybe like his mouth and his eye, and just ripping. And you're like, what?
Ow.
It's absurd. Yeah, so it's 1 in a black. It's an instant. It has Entwine, which I don't know about you two, but Entwine comes up a lot in my future picks as well. It's a really neat little mechanic. So you can choose 1. You can sacrifice any number of creatures and then gain 3 life for each creature you sacrificed. Or you can pay X life, look at the top X cards of your library, and then put 1 of them into your hand and remove the rest from the game. Or if you pay an extra black when you cast this, you get to do both.
Yay!
For Kalos Dos.
Right, exactly. And so when you look at this, it's so black. The idea of sacrificing your creatures, gaining life for that sacrifice, and then in turn using that life to pay for card advantage. Like, this just drips black flavor. The art is horrific. I love everything about this, and I just love it.
It's an instant kind of sort of tutor.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's one of those really, it's powerful. It's instant speed. It's only 2 mana. You're able to, I don't think a lot of people are sacrificing creatures with this card. I think it was mainly just like to pay a bunch of life, go find a thing.
Pay a bunch of life, go find a thing. Yeah.
Right. But regardless, that in and of itself is fine.
Yeah, I mean, even just the flavor of it, the idea of, again, sacrificing your life to get cards, you're, again, plunging into darkness. Or even worse, if you're sacrificing things, to pay for your pursuits, that's very black too. And so it just hits all the marks.
That's awesome.
The only time I ever saw this used for the life gain ability was in an EDH deck that was using Bitter Blossom to gain all their life back. That same deck, by the way, used that Plunge into Darkness to go to 1 life for their near-death experience.
Oh!
The only time I've ever seen that card in play.
That's amazing.
The only time I ever saw near-death experience in play was with Plunge into Darkness. So for that reason alone, I love that it's in the top 10.
Aaron, what is your number 8?
My number 8 came from one of the Tarkir sets, specifically Fate Reforged. And it was a really neat take on board wipes that we had never really seen before. My number 8 is Crux of Fate. So I really like this card. So it's 3 and 2 black. It's a sorcery, and you can choose 1. You can either destroy all dragon creatures, or you can also destroy all non-dragon creatures. And so for somebody like me, I played a deck called Esper Dragons, which revolved around playing Dragon Lord Ojutai and sort of taking a protect the queen kind of stance. That's really your win condition. You had Baby Jason, you had Ojutai. And so being able to choose, all non-dragon creatures while keeping your Haymaker alive was really what Control decks at that time wanted to do. And likewise, there were also dragons that were on the opposing team. Like I know the big red decks were a thing, Thunderbreak Regent. And so if they wanted to preserve their dragons but still wipe the people who weren't playing dragons, you had that option as well. And so it was really nifty, and there was really something for everybody. And it was, like I said, it was just a really neat take on a board which we'd never seen before. And it also paints a little bit of the lore between, sort of Ugin and Bolas and that battle between them and what happened after it was all said and done.
That's awesome. It's one of the most interesting 5-mana wraths I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they they wanted dragons to matter, and this is about as clear as you can get to make dragons matter.
This was the preview card this was the first card that they officially previewed from the set.
Yeah.
So when you saw this card and you were like, wow, they mean it when they say Dragons of Tarkir. Boy, do they mean it this time, apparently.
Yeah, they're going back in time, they're changing stuff, and stuff's getting crazy.
As soon as we saw this card spoiled, we knew that there would be enough dragons that sometimes you'd choose the Destroy All Dragons mode, which was a big deal.
Absolutely, and I think they made them good enough, sort of to play this and for have this to see play. It was super great. Obviously, ridiculous and limited, and pretty awesome in standard as well. All right, so Ruben, what is your number 8?
My number 8 has the lovely sentence "choose 3" on it, followed by the "you may choose the same mode more than once." It's from the Confluence cycle, all of which are great, all of which have their utility, but my number 8 is Fiery Confluence.
Yeah!
Because I'm a red mage at heart. 2 colorless red sorcery, choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Deal 1 damage to each creature, deal 2 damage to each opponent, or destroy target artifact. This card is maybe my favorite card from like the last 3 years for Cube, because it's finally a red burn spell that deals 6 to your opponent. Like there's some drafts where you're just like, man, I got all these lightning strikes and all these, I got a firebolt, but like I just got to deal 6 sometimes. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And to be able to staple that onto a card that can also sometimes wipe your opponent's board or deal with your opponent's Hedron archive or what have you. This card is incredibly potent. It's also picked up play in Vintage, where the destroy target artifact is a huge deal.
I played it at VSL.
Wow.
Nice. There you go. See, being able to destroy artifacts or wipe your opponent's things like Spirit of the Labyrinth and other X1s and X2s is a big deal. So much utility in all of the confluences, but Fiery Confluence is the one that is nearest and dearest to my red mage heart.
Will not pass this in Cube. Absolutely.
No.
Will not. I see this thing in the Moto Cube. It's come here. Just come on home.
Just get in the
bring
back.
it. Let's just do this. Just me and you. Let's get in the seat.
There
Oh my
are
God.
3 red cards that I will first pick first pack and never look back. Like there are some cards where I'll be like, all right, I picked a lightning bolt, but I can splash that in like a blue control deck.
Right.
It's Goblin Guide, Koth of the Hammer, and Fiery Confluence.
Yeah.
Man.
That's it.
I have yet to lose a game of Cube where I was able to resolve Fiery Confluence. Like it just ends games.
It's rough, man.
It's
a
ridiculous.
full third of your opponent's life total. It's a Slag Storm when you need a Slag Storm. And it's also 3 Shatters stapled to one another, or some combination thereof. Sometimes you just want to get rid of like an army of, Avenger of Zendikar tokens and also destroy an artifact.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, a lot of times, sometimes you're just like, well, I'll deal 1 and kill all of your like fairies or whatever, and 4 to your face because reasons,
Because take it, yeah. Destroy all your Bitter Blossom tokens and then take 4, which drops off your Bitter Blossom counter down to 4 more turns. So yeah, this card's amazing.
All right, and so for my number 8. This is where it gets weird. This is one of those, like, I'm pretty sure no one will have this on their radar as a card I will have chosen for this list. But it was Magic 2012, and Wizards made a really weird creature. A creature that I was like, I just don't really understand, but I loved the idea of it, and it was super cool. Skin Shifter is a green and a generic mana for just a 1/1. Okay, it's 2 mana 1/1. All right, whatever. But for 1 green, you choose one. Until end of turn, it's a 4/4 Rhino with trample, or until end of turn, it's a 2/2 bird with flying, or until end of turn, Skin Shifter is an 08 plant. Activate this ability only once each turn. So that's to me like one of the epitomes of like what's an awesome modal spell. It's whatever creature you need right now. Like I need an 08, which will basically block everything but like the newly printed dinosaurs, like and even Carnage Tyrant. Just hey, Skin Shifter says 1 green, stop it. 1 green, cut out. You got blockers on the ground. We're flying. We're getting you in the head. You know.
This reminds me of Primal Clay from back in the day. Those of you who've been playing for a while. Again, that sort of shifting. I love cards like this. I'm always happy to see them, and I think they're nifty.
In Primal Clay, you only get that one time. You know what I mean? When it enters the battlefield, you got to figure out right now. This one's just like, no, man, it's cool. Spade green, we're good.
Whenever you want. It just becomes it whenever you want, and that's fantastic. So you can attack as a 4/4 if they manage to try to pull a 4 mana instant speed burn spell out of their pocket, or a Last Gasp, or a Death Grasp, or something like that out of their pocket. Oh well, you're not taking any, but here's an 08 plant. You know,
well, you can only do it once per turn, according to the card. Yeah.
But the ability to do that at instant speed, whenever you want.
Yeah. Doing that at instant speed's a big deal. I know that this is in a lot of people's Dorian the Siege Tower EDH decks because that 08 plan. And it also just looks like Nicolas Cage. Which I know
totally
the discussion on this card when it came out was literally just that he's just trying to change shape so that he doesn't get attacked by those bees anymore.
My eyes!
From the Wicker Man. Good choice. I like this one.
Awesome. We're going to move on here to number 7. Now, the word charm starting to show up more because as we move on up, it totally is. And there was a big cycle of charms that showed up in Shards of Alara because, of course, those were about the shards. And those were, we needed to have some charms about them. They needed to be really sweet. Yeah. They needed to be so sweet that if you screwed up, then you could ask your opponent, who are you targeting? And if they answer wrong, they've lost the game. You've lost the game with Esper Charm. It's a black, a blue, and a white mana for an uncommon instant from Shards of Alara. You choose one, destroy target enchantment, or draw 2 cards. That's the beginning. That's the long and short of it.
Target player draws 2 cards. Draw 2 cards.
Draw 2 cards. Yeah. Or target player discards 2 cards. And so they would say Esper Charm, and you would say target. And they would say, well, me. And you go, Judge? You'd say, Judge, they said them. They said
that's a thing that's happened in real life.
Yep.
What?
There's a couple famous examples of it. One of my favorites is there was a player who earnestly did that on purpose to themselves, and then their opponent was thinking about it, and then twin casted it to make them discard all 4 cards from their hand, and 2 of the cards were Vengevines. And the player casting the original version thought that they could just discard the Obstinate Bailouts, not Vengevines. And the player who was casting it thought that it would have worked, but he actually needed the twin casted version to get the Obstinate Bailouts in play.
Oh my god!
But Esper Charm it's a Consult the Necrosages with upside. Draw 2 cards, or target player discards 2 cards, or you get to do something else. Very powerful, very potent. Saw a lot of play actually in Esper control decks. Really, really good card. Still sees play in Modern actually.
Oh yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah. There's like a Dimir Splash White control deck that runs a couple copies of this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Consult the Necrosages was on my sort of short list, but then I came upon Esper Charm and I was like, oh well, Yob.
Of course, yeah.
The card's amazing, and again, it made those amazing, ridiculous moments where you just go target. Could you target? Could you say target?
Yeah, that's one of those. We don't really like talking about those moments in mixed company about like here's how you can get your opponent. But then when we're between friends, we're like, dude, you know what's hilarious when you do this to your opponent. This is certainly an entry on the chaotic evil side of things, but I like it.
Let's see here, Ruben, what is your number 7?
My number 7's higher on someone else's list, so we'll talk about it later.
You got it. Aaron, what is your number 7?
Speaking of chaotic evil, my number 7 was the art on the Game Day playmat at the time this set came out. This card was first seen in Gatecrash, And it's also another neat take on the idea of a board wipe, because you have the board wipes that are just sort of known for removing creatures, but sometimes creatures aren't your problem. Sometimes enchantments are your problem. Sometimes artifacts are your problem. Or sometimes even planeswalkers are your problem. And nothing feels worse than holding on to a board wipe when that's not what you need. You want to wipe something, but you don't want to wipe creatures. And my number 7 is Merciless Eviction, and it can help you with that. So it costs 4 white and a black, and it's a sorcery, and you choose one. So you can either A, exile all artifacts, exile, not just destroy, or you can exile all creatures, or exile all enchantments, or exile all planeswalkers. So whatever is bothering you, this card gets rid of, unless it's lands, in which case you're still on your own. But I love this card. I think the art is gorgeous. To me, it kind of reminds me of Damnation a little bit, with sort of the black hole, sucking things into it. The flavor, the text alone. Aurelia saying, I only saw the Obsidian move to action once. Since that day, I've been thankful that they're mainly lazy and dead. And it's just like, I love it. Like, it's just so Orzhov. And I love just being able to get rid of everything and literally get rid of it. You're not resurrecting it. You're not recurring it. It's gone. And I love that.
And they reprinted it in Magic 2016 and Magic 2017 with like the new template where it's just the dots.
Yeah.
It's so cool. You just this, you get rid of those, you get rid of this. Everything goes away.
This is maybe the most important card in like casual kitchen table Magic. Because everyone's like, ooh, my deck has a theme. My deck's theme is going to be indestructible giant artifacts. Well, tough luck. My deck's theme is going to be Enchantress. Well, I got news for you. My deck's theme is going to be Super Friends. I got 45 Planeswalkers in my deck. It's like, I got bad news, friend. Like, this is maybe the most important casual card printed in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's super powerful, too. Not that it sees play in any competitive format, but certainly for kitchen table and for EDH and for casual, this is an extremely, extremely important card.
And I think just for flavor reasons, I think the art is fantastic, and I think the ability to have those many choices that are that powerful is terrific. But Aaron, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is a card that I never really understood until I got to play with it for myself. I had seen a lot of people talking about it, a lot of hype behind it, and I was like, I don't get it. And then I started playing Death Cloud. And this was a card that was usually ran as a 1-of, just a little spicy meatball. And then when I actually cast it, I started to understand what the hype was all about. My number 6 is Primal Command. I was never a Cryptic Command girl. I'm not really a blue mage. There weren't many commands that tripped my trigger, but this one. So it's 3 and 2 green. It's a sorcery. You can choose 2. Target player gains 7 life. Or put target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library. Or target player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. Or search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. There's so many neat combinations of things you can do with this card. Specifically, you can take a non-creature permanent that's bothering you, like say a sideboard card, shuffle it in the, and then shuffle
their graveyard in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing. So you can get rid of a non-creature permanent if you're up against burn decks. It just gives you a lot of life and possibly gets you a kitchen thing, which you can use.
Right.
I'm still finding neat ways to use this card, and I just think it's one of the commands we don't really talk about, but for me, it's sort of my personal favorite.
I think they slept on it at first. Like when the commands first showed up, it was like, oh my god, Cryptic Command, Austere Command, sweet, and even the red command started getting some love
Incendiary
before. Incendiary started getting love before Primal did, and I'm like, okay, remember Quick and Toast? But here we are. It's long. For those who don't know, it's cool. Don't worry about it. It was a weird time.
Primal deck?
Yeah,
it was a deck that had 11 vivid lands in it.
Quick and Toast. Okay, I'm writing that down.
Quick and Toast. Look up Manuel Butcher. Bucher, Manuel Butcher, and Guillermo Wafotapa built a control deck because Vivid Lands came into play with 2 counters on them, and also Reflecting Pool existed, and so then you could play things like Cryptic Command and Austere Command and Cruel Ultimatum all in the same deck. But regardless, back to Primal Command.
Back to Primal Command, which was terrific. Well, and one of the things that my friends and I were talking about at the time when this card showed up was essentially 7 life is more or less a quote-unquote time walk. Like, it's the amount of life that you can expect to lose and or be attacked into if what you had to do was give your opponent another turn. And the other abilities just kind of sort of mishmash and kind of work together in really awesome ways. And just going able to find a thing and put your non-creature permanent back on top of your library, so you have to pay for it again, you have to wait for its effects again, or whatever. Oftentimes that was good enough, and usually you have a whole bunch of mana anyway. So going and getting the creature, sometimes you can just cast it right then too. Primal Command's sweet.
Yeah, it was great. There was an infinite combo deck, I seem to recall, with Primal Command, Wall of Roots, Greater Gargadon. I forget exactly all the pieces you needed, but it was a Patrick Chapin brainchild that he played at some event where it was just like, I'm going to deck my opponent with infinite Greater Gargadon triggers all in the stack at the same time, and Primal Command putting every one of my opponent's permanents on top of their deck. I forget exactly how it worked. It was one. I mean, it was Patrick Chapin's brain, so I don't comprehend exactly. It's like in the movie Contact when you can't understand fourth dimensional geometry. It's like that. I can't understand exactly what's going on. But Primal Command was a part of that. Yeah. It's a callback to Plow Under, another classic, fun Magic card from back in the day, where you could plow under your opponent's non-creature permanents, which included lands. Yeah, there were just so many interesting and fun things to be able to do with Primal Command. So yeah, definitely a great choice.
Go check out my Magic shows on Pro Tour Hollywood for a infamous sequence of Patrick Chapin explaining his deck and how it works with the background of the dueling banjos, because it's absolutely insane. Like the way he's trying to explain how he wins the game is insane. That said, Ruben, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is also higher.
Wow, look at you.
I got a lot of overlap this week.
That's okay. Well, my number 6. We get to spend a lot of time in the Ravnicas when it comes to modal spells, as it were, including the return to it, which also included, of course, Gatecrash. And in Gatecrash, I got a preview card, and man, was it a spicy one. And it was so good, and I knew it was good, and I just, the moment you read it, you're just like, oh, you get what for 2 mana? Boros Charm for a red and a white mana is an uncommon instant that lets you choose one. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player, or permanents you control are indestructible, or target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Like, all amazing, awesome things to do at instant speed for 2 mana.
Yeah,
it's just I love it. I've always loved it. It's amazing in aggressive decks. It was amazing in standard. I can't. It was wonderful, and I love it.
That card makes my breasts ache with rage. Just, I can't. It's just, See, taking the 4 is not fun. You know, the burn decks love it. They still use it in Modern Burn to this day. Yep. You think you're hot. You think you're going to kill a goblin guy. Nope, it is indestructible. You think you're playing Leyline of Sanctity and you're safe because they can't target you with burn spells. They'll just give their Swift Spear double strike and kill you that way. Like, this card is annoying.
Yeah. I mean, 90% of the time, it's deal 4 damage for 2 mana. Yeah. Which, that card is playable. That card is already good enough. Colorless and a red is Flame Rift already in the Legacy burn decks.
Right.
This one is like, instead of a colorless, you have to have white mana in your deck, and you don't have to take the 4 damage. That's huge. So 90% of the time, it's already a playable Magic card. Add to it the fact that you can counter an uncounterable Supreme Verdict in Standard, which was a thing that happened a lot, or give a 5/5 or a 6/6, or if your opponent has a Leyline of Sanctity or an Ivory Mask effect in play of some kind, deal your opponent a bunch of damage. Like, that's through a creature. That's pretty insane. It's already ridiculously powerful.
I think the real key here is that it says permanents you control gain indestructible. Everything.
Now, you can counter Wasteland activations.
You counter Wasteland. You counter Disenchants. You know what I mean? You counter everything.
I did once cast this in response to an Armageddon in Cube once. I will say that, which was nice.
It's so good. Lord. It's so good. I love it.
If only I had been able to cast it and then cast my own Armageddon, I think that would have been better, but I'll take it.
I'll take that 6 mana mono
combo. We're getting a lot of Gatecrash for a set that we don't love a whole lot. They're getting a whole lot of love in this modal spell top 10.
When it shined pretty bright.
It's true.
Ruben, I have the same number 5 as someone else, and I'm pretty sure it's you.
Oh, it's us.
What's our number 5, buddy?
So, the word command means something in Magic. That means that you get to choose 2. We've talked about Primal Command already on the show. Last week 2 weeks ago, I talked about Dromoka's Command. This one's another one of those dragon commands. This one belongs to perhaps the least loved, except for by Aaron, who reanimates this Dragon Lord quite often. This one's Kolagon's Command. Kolagon's Command is the all-star of this command cycle, and it does a lot of unique things, particularly in the Grixis control deck. And so it costs a colorless, a black, and a red, and it's an instant. Choose, and it's from Dragons of Tarkir. Choose 2. Return target creature card from your graveyard to play, or to your hand, sorry, not to play. Target player discards a card, destroy target artifact, or Kolaghan's Command deals 2 damage to target creature or player. All of which are super utility, all of which are not really worth 1 card in your deck. But when you put them all together, especially in something like a Gritz's Delver shell, when you have a lot of Snapcaster Mages and Delver of Secrets and little effects and Young Pyromancers and things like that, very important piece that glues the whole thing together.
It is one of those, again, this was a cycle of, like, you've seen command, quote unquote, you've seen charms, you've seen commands, let's see what we can do, and then, like, cut a mana off it at the very last end of development. Like, you know what, let's just make it 3 mana, whatever, who cares?
Right.
Because you have this amazing sort of Raise Dead into, like, I guess, a Raven's Crime, sort of, and then you have the Shatter, and then you got the Shock, and you're able to just slice and dice this however you want. You have the ability to play Snapcaster Mage to get this, to get other Snapcaster mages back, and kill theirs, or kill their Delver, or do all sorts of crazy, stupid stuff. Like, it was just so good. And to be the red-black one, like, the red-black one got to be the best one. The red-black one never gets to be the best at anything. Right. Any cycle that has Rakdos, it sucks usually, like, really bad. But Kolaghan's Command, like, Aaron, this has to be right up your alley.
No, but I've certainly been on the wrong end of a Kolaghan's Command. This is a combo deck's worst nightmare. Take 2. Specifically, if you're playing ad nauseum, destroying an artifact and making me discard is not where I want to be. This also sees play in Legacy. This goes all the way up to Legacy. The check pile decks, which is the current hotness in Legacy, where you basically just jam good cards and hope to God your mana works. This is a card that they make sure they have. This is a card that people feel is important enough to jam in there with the likes of Force of Will, with the likes of Hymn to Turok. This is a card that people do not want to leave home without in Legacy, in their main deck. And the card is just really, really scary. There's just some really broken things you can do with it, and I'm just never happy to see the card. It's like, oh boy.
Yeah, we're still in the $10 to $12 range, in terms of value.
Yeah.
It's weird that this is so powerful, because you look at each individual effect, and each individual effect I'm only willing to pay 1 mana for, max, right? Shock. At this point, I'm only paying a red mana to destroy an artifact. I'm not shattering. Unless I get to abrade something, I'm only going to pay 1 mana. I'm not going to pay retail on destroying an artifact. Raise Dead is 1 black mana, and target player discards a card isn't even. It's Funeral Charm, but it's like a fourth of a Funeral Charm. It's like a bad Duress,
like
or
a
a
third
bad
of a card.
Other. Yeah, it's not even that good. But you combine it all together, also putting the discard on instant speed.
On instant, I was about to mention.
Deal,
that's huge.
Which is the old Funeral Charm trick when your opponent's already hellbent and then you make them discard it during their draw step. That's mean. But yeah, you staple it all together and you got the makings of an eternal all-star somehow. Just a spectacularly good card, kind of out of nowhere.
Awesome. Aaron, what is your number 5?
Ruben, I'll have you know I'm very upset with you currently.
I apologize. At this point, I can only apologize. What are you upset with me for?
I'm upset with you because you slandered my number 5.
Uh-oh.
What did you? What about Funeral Charm? What?
Oh, nothing.
What?
It's just that if it's a card that exists. I don't know if anybody.
Funeral Charm is my number 5 because it's fabulous.
Nice.
It's specifically my first taste of this card. The 8-rack decks like to run it because it can, as Ruben pointed out, one of the modes is that target player discards a card. Mm-hmm. The other 2 modes is that target creature gets +2, -1 until end of turn, or a creature gains Swamp Block until end of turn for the cost of 1 black. It's an instant. The reason why the discard decks like to run this is because eventually if you're doing your job right, your opponents are not going to have any cards. And so you need to have something that can do something else if your opponent has no cards in hand. This can deal with hate cards like Thalia, which is something these decks might want to bring in to make it more expensive for you. Or a neat little trick that I did once before. I played Mono Black Infect for a brief time in Modern, and I used Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, to give everything swamps. And then you get something really big, like a Phyrexian Crusader, like a Phyrexian Vat Mother even, and then you just get into a Swamp Block. And that's also something the mono black decks can do as well. It's just very underrated charm. This is my first charm in the top 10, and I love this card. And so it was interesting when Ruben kept name-dropping it, and I was like, it's number 5.
Look, the reason why I name-drop it is because it's iconic. It's one of the best, if not the best, of the original cycle. It's between this and Emerald Charm from the Visions cycle, I think, of the best cycles. It even got reprinted in Time Spiral and then time and then reshifted into Piracy Charm in Planar Chaos.
Yep.
It's removal, it's evasion, it's instant speed discard. It's the cruelest thing that you can put on an Isochron Scepter, I'm convinced. It's the meanest thing that you can do with an Isochron Scepter. For 1 mana in a very compact package. Excellent choice.
I mean,
just making sure we're clear. That's my.
I wasn't trying to slander it. I was name dropping it, knowing the power that it holds.
Okay.
It could be a little slander going on. It's fine.
A little bit, maybe a little bit.
But the shifting to the Piracy Charm was super cool because suddenly blue was making you discard cards.
Yeah.
And that was just this little mind-blowing moment during Time Spiral. It was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, wait a second. What's happening here? With that and, like, I think Wistful Thinking was another blue discard spell that they added. There was just a bunch of weird stuff happening in Planar Chaos.
Yeah, target player draws 2 cards, then discards 4 cards. That was a weird one.
Great.
Fantastic. But Funeral Charm is great, is iconic, is terrific. Yeah. Ruben, do you have a number 4?
I do. I do have a number 4, and I feel a little bad about choosing this as my number 4. Because it's like, I feel like it's kind of cheating to pick this one. But the most recently printed version of it that appears in Commander Anthology does have the bullet points and does have the choose one. So I'm counting it as a modal spell.
Okay.
Deceiver Exarch is my number 4.
Sir.
It is kind of cheating. Look, I know that it really doesn't do one of 2 things. I know that it does exactly one thing. But it says choose 2 on it. And you know that my number 1 thing is it a dominant card in a format? Is it iconic? Has it won Pro Tours? And this has won Pro Tours, plural. It has dominated formats, plural. And it says choose 1 on it. So the card itself is 2 colorless and a blue with flash. It's a cleric, by the way, in case the cleric creature type was ever relevant on a blue.
Yeah.
When Deceiver Exarch enters the battlefield, choose 1. Long dash, bullet point, untap target permanent you control, or bullet point, tap target permanent and opponent controls. Yeah, it's a little bit. Look, we all know that this is the card that combos with Kiki Jiki and combos with Splinter Twin, and that's really what it's used for. But there are times when you just like drop it and tap down your opponent's last land to be able to resolve something that isn't a combo piece. A lot of the time, something like a Jace or something along those lines. Back when Twin Blade was a thing in Standard, extremely potent, extremely powerful, kind of a reprint of Pestermite, which isn't worded with the modal phrasing, which is actually relevant sometimes because Deceiver Exarch is an ability that can have its effect redirected sometimes. And if it weren't modal like Pestermite, you can redirect that to your stuff if you're targeting your opponents, or vice versa. Whereas Deceiver Exarch can't really be redirected in that way. So Deceiver Exarch, super powerful, super iconic, super potent. It's got to sneak into the top 10, I think.
Super shady.
It's just on my list. Look, I understand. If you guys want to come at me, if you're gonna at me, come at me on this one. I'm fine with that. I'll take it. I can take the brunt of the
basically, I mean, I understand if you see the M dash, that's what that little thing's called. M dash plus the untapped target permanent plus the tap target. It's fine. You got some bullet points. It's obviously a ridiculous spell. It's done unbelievable amounts of work in constructed formats. And yeah, the day it was printed, well, not the day it was printed, but very soon after was Chapin's article. And like, did they realize they just put an infinite combo? Like,
right. Now, this was originally part of a cycle from New Phyrexia, and I was originally going to just name Entomber Exarch about Deceiver Exarch, because Entomber Exarch did also see a lot of competitive play, especially in those modern Birthing Pod decks. But this one was the part of the New Phyrexian cycle of Exarch clerics that really left its footprint.
All right, so for my number 4, let's see here. I want to make sure it's not higher on anyone else's. So for my number 4 is one of those entwine spells, and it has been updated, thankfully, with M dashes and bullet points. It's certainly worthy of its reprinting. It originally showed up in 5th Dawn, and this is one of those big spells. Particularly when I came back to Magic in 5th Dawn, I was whole hogging and playing Magic at that point. This is one of those spells that kind of snuck up on me. But once you see it in play, and once you see it played, you go, "Oh, this card is amazing!" Because Rude Awakening is just ridiculous. Rude Awakening is a green and 4 generic mana for a rare sorcery. You choose one, untap all lands you control, or until end of turn, lands you control become 2/2 creatures that are still lands, and you entwine it for a green and 2 generic mana. So essentially, for 2 green and 6 generic mana, for 8 mana, you just kind of come out of nowhere and hit them. And for 8 mana, if you have 8 lands, it's 16 damage. Like you're just like, oh, I got 10 lands, and you just tapped out for whatever, or I just end of turn got rid of all your blockers. Rude Awakening kill you. And happens in Cube all the time. This thing was a Cube All-Star, has stayed a Cube All-Star. Rude Awakening is just one of those cards that you can't really forget about because, much like Dre, it's going to come and get you.
I have this in my Omnath EDH deck, which I talked about earlier. The card is gross.
It's so good. It's so wonderful. I love the design.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it has achieved second life as another copy of Turnabout in the cubes that want to have ways to untap all of their lands for potential storm kills. So the MTGO cube has Rude Awakening in it as well, just in case you need a 5-mana Turnabout. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, this was the 1-card kill in a lot of the big green decks. Yeah. All you wanted to do all day was cast this with 10 lands in play. That's all you needed, was just search out all your basics and then Rude Awakening your opponent. This card's a spectacularly powerful card, super iconic. I've killed multiple people just by having an entwined Rude Awakening more than once. And also, don't sleep on just turning the tapping 5 mana, turning your lands into your 4 remaining lands into 2/2s and attacking for 8. Like sometimes that was good enough because you needed to not entwine it for some reason. Yeah. So yeah.
The card is fantastic. But Aaron, absolutely. What is your number 4?
It's funny, Ruben, that you mentioned the Splinter Twin combo, because my number 4 could be seen as an answer to that. I've certainly surprised some Splinter Twin players with it myself. This is a card that I like to bring in when I'm playing Modern Dredge because it's very versatile. You can destroy some Leyline of the Voids with it, you can destroy some Spirit tokens with it, or you can also survive an Anger of the Gods with it. My number 4 is Golgari Charm, which is a black and a green. It's an instant. You can choose one. All creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Or you can destroy target enchantment, or you can regenerate each creature you control. Very, very versatile. I'm always surprised that this doesn't see more play because it just does so many things. It's very rarely ever just a dead card. I like to bring it in against the Jund and Abzan decks specifically because sometimes they like to Blood Moon me. Destroys that if you have the mana ready for it. Sometimes they like to bring in Leyline of the Void against me. Destroys that too. Or if they play Anger of the Gods, you can survive. Or if they're playing Lingering Souls, or even at worst, just killing a Bob feels really, really good. A Dark Confidant with this. I love this charm. This is my favorite of the cycles. And so this is my number 4.
It was one of those really subtle, again, much like Boros Charm, it's a very subtle answer to Supreme Verdict, which is like, well, while it can't be countered and destroying stuff, it's okay because all my guys are regenerated. Even though Wizards has kind of gotten away from regeneration anyway, Boros Charm is really the answer they use these days, which is your creatures get indestructibility, they don't get regeneration because it's harder to understand the whole regenerate this thing, and when it regenerates, if it's untapped, it has to tap, and whatever, versus saying you can't kill it, period.
Yeah, this was also big, if I remember, Ghost Pants was a thing at the time. Yeah. Sort of the standard version of Boggles, and so this was a way to also destroy the enchantments. Again, I used to bring this in Modern Boggles as well to get rid of a pesky enchantment, or if God forbid Boggles has a slow start, you can sort of get rid of those Blade Cover Scouts before they get too big. Just a very, very versatile card. I'm never sad to see it, and I'm always looking for more reasons to use it.
It's super good and super efficient.
Kind of overshadowed by Abrupt Decay at the same casting cost from the same set, but you're absolutely right that this has a lot of utility that Abrupt Decay doesn't have. Being able to take out a turn 2 Dark Confidant, being able to get rid of a token swarm later in the game. Super versatile and very worthy of a sideboard inclusion.
Absolutely. So my number 3 is higher on someone else's list. However,
same.
Wow.
Also higher on someone else's list.
Wow.
I'll handle this.
Aaron, what is our number 3, our one and only?
There is a phrase that people like to use in American politics right now called dog whistling, meaning that someone says something, And to those who aren't trying to hear it, or to those who that message is not for, you don't hear anything. But to those who it's for, it comes in very, very loud and very, very clear. My number 3 is a dog whistle. So when this card first came out very recently, there were people that were like, why would I want to do that? This is terrible. And there were those of us that were like, this is exactly what I want to be doing. My number 3 is Collective Brutality. So when this card first came out, it's colorless and a black. It's a sorcery. It has Escalate, which is a new mechanic from Shadow's Block. So you can discard a card to pay the cost for each mode you choose beyond the first. So by itself, you can choose one or more. So you can target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an instant or sorcery card from it. That player discards it. It's got a little duress there. Or you can target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, or target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So you can do all 3 modes for 1 and a black, and then you discard 2 cards. Most people don't like discarding cards. They're like, why would I want to do that? The card's terrible. But if you're playing like a Reanimator deck, or you're playing a Dredge deck, this is exactly where you want to be. Reanimator players and Graveyard players heard the dog whistle from miles away and were like, oh, I'm in. This card changed the game for Legacy Reanimator. It's not uncommon to see 4 copies of this in the main and Legacy. I actually think it's much better in Legacy than it is in Modern. It kills Deathrite Shaman, it fills your graveyard, it takes away counter spells. If you're trying to clear the way, if you're worried about surgical extraction, you can do that too. Modern Dredge, this is a great enabler. You know, it can sometimes be like your 5th Cathartic Reunion or your 6th Cathartic Reunion. The Jund and Abzan decks love this as well. It's just so versatile, so powerful, and the people who want to be discarding cards, you are happy to discard cards because all the modes are relevant to you. And to the people who play the pertinent decks, this card just changed the game.
Wow.
And this was my number 7. It's also super important in one of my favorite decks, Lantern Control in Modern. Boy. It's an uncounterable discard outlet. It's a huge deal. Uncounterable discard outlet in any deck that wants a discard outlet is a huge deal. Anybody who's cast Firestorm in the past knows that that's true. And if you Cathartic Reunion exactly the same way. But when you get your like Careful Study countered, it's a problem. This one, the cards are out of your hand even if you don't get the secondary effect. Yeah. Which, let's talk about these secondary effects. Gaining 2 life is a huge deal. Dealing 2 damage to your opponent's not the huge deal, but gaining 2 life can be an enormous deal when you're casting this card for like Escalate 1 against a burn deck, right? You're taking a burn spell out of their hand. The discard effect is the big selling point here. The duress effect of being able to take an instant or sorcery out of your opponent's deck is is the biggest reason to play this as a spell, other than the being able to be a free discard outlet. And killing a Goblin Guide or killing a Deathrite Shaman or killing a Delver of Secrets also a huge deal as well. So it easily made my top 10. Easily one of I think it's by far the best of the collective spells that came out of Shadow's block. So definitely Collective Brutality deserving of a mention.
I've also died to it. There was one time I got Grizzlebrand happy, and I just started drawing and happened to not draw anything good. So I was like, all right, I'll just discard and pass the turn. Yeah, I passed the turn exactly 2 life. Yeah, and there was someone that was just like, Brutality for 2, and I was like, I couldn't even be mad.
You did it to yourself. Right. That's how that one works.
Greatness at any cost. Well, there's a cost.
lot of cost. So, Ruben, do you have a number 2?
No. It is higher on someone else's list.
Wow.
For those playing along at home, for those keeping score in your box scores at home, that's 4 higher on someone else's lists this week for me. 4.
4 higher and 1 same.
And a same.
So for those who are also keeping track at home, my number 2 is also higher on someone else's list, so I know what someone's number 1 is.
So yeah, Aaron, you have to handle number 3 and number 2 duties.
Please.
Number 2 duties. See what
I did that before the show.
He's a comedian.
He
makes the joke.
Sometimes I question that, but yeah.
My jokes are crap though, so.
Oh wow. Just jeez.
No, you did not.
You're welcome, America.
This is what you tuned in for. Aaron,
exactly.
What is your number 2?
My number 2 was a Nightmare in Extended. My first experience with this card was with a young man at my local game store who loves to play a mono green devotion deck. when he comes to modern F&M. And that's not really like a tier deck. It can be considered more of a fringe deck, more of a cute deck. And I remember the first time I saw him playing this, I was like, oh, that is just too adorable. So he plays out his little mana dorks, he does a little primal command, and I'm like, well, this is just so great. I could pinch his little cheeks. And he plays a Nykthos, and I'm like, okay, I'm still not afraid of anything here. What is he going to do? Is he going to beat me with a Voyaging Satyr? What are we dealing with here? And then he casts my number 2, which is Tooth and Nail. 5 and 2 green, sorcery, choose one, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, reveal them and put them into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Or put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield and twine 2 colorless, which is not hard for a mono green deck to do. So he searches of Emrakul, and then drops Emrakul.
As you do.
And so we went from just a harmless little green deck with some dorks to freaking Emrakul. This card is terrifying. Green has always had its own way of sort of cheating creatures into play. We talked about black being able to reanimate things. Green usually just ramps into them, just hard cast fatties. But this allows you to go searching for them and then just drop them on the battlefield. This card is frightening because you just never know what's going to come out of it. There are many articles about how terrifying this was back when it was standard, legal, back and extended. And the art's kind of creepy too when you think about it. And this card just absolutely deserves to be up here because it's frightening.
When I came back to Magic, I left in Exodus and I came out, ironically, and I came back in Darksteel. And when I came back to Standard, essentially I was there at the game store and I was excited. I'm like, all right, man, what's good in Magic? Tell them what's good in Magic. And they're like, well, there's 2 decks. There's this stupid affinity crap and there's Tooth and Nail. And I'm like, what? And they're like, let me show you how it works. And they're like rampant growth and they're doing all this crazy stuff. And then there's Kadama's Reach showed up, which certainly didn't hurt it. But anyway, Tooth and Nail was like, blah, we just do this thing. And then we just have this stupid fatties, the best fatties you can possibly find in Standard. And it was great. And, of course I didn't play that deck or Affinity. I played White Weenie because I'm an idiot. But, sure. I had a lot of fun losing to Tooth and Nail and Affinity decks because this card was easily the best thing you could do in Standard beyond winning on turn 4.
I mean, sometimes you won on turn 4 with this card, though. You
made
a lot of mana very,
draws?
very quickly. You had the nuttiest of nut draws. Yeah, but this was the only thing that kept the robots at bay.
It's true.
It was the shining beacon of hope against the robot overlords of 90% of every tournament you ever played in. And the other fun thing about Tooth and Nail is that, which by the way, this was my number 6. So we're ticking down on my top 10 hires. The other fun thing about Tooth and Nail is that there are so many hilarious combos that you have to be able to do because you have to go get 2 creatures, right? So this is a 1-card win condition in and of itself for 9 mana, but it went and got hilarious 2-card combos. You could go get Kiki Jiki Pestermite, or you could go get like Mephidros Vampire. What was the combo?
Triskelion.
Mephidros Vampire.
And one
was the combo in Standard.
Right.
Uyo Silent Prophet allowed you to copy your Tooth and Nail that was entwined to go get 4 creatures, and it was Uyo, Mephidros Vampire, Triskelion, and something else that was ridiculous. But you can go get Urabrask the Hidden and Emrakul. Yeah. You could go get any number of two creature combos, and it's a very high pick in Cube to this day. People try to make Tooth and Nail work in Modern. There was an extended deck for a while that was Tooth and Nail. It was like good. A 4-color, had like a collective. It had the propaganda for Domain in it. That's what I remember about that deck.
Sure.
Collected Effort or something like that. Right. But yeah, Tooth and Nail always been a big part of Magic. It was recently reprinted in Modern Masters with new art, and it's near and dear to a lot of Magic players' hearts.
Super iconic. And one of my favorite plays in the Cube is you play this, but you go get Eternal Witness plus something, so you can get the Tooth and Nail back. It's terrific. Right. Absolutely terrific. So, with our one and only number 2 out of the way, we get to go straight to number 1. Ruben, what's your number 1, buddy? You've had so much taken away from you.
I know. I've gotten to sit back and watch as you guys sort of talk about the cards that I picked, but earlier on the list. And luckily for me, I'm the only one that has Umezawa's Jite alone at number 1. Umezawa's Jite is a legendary artifact from I forget what set. Evan, what set is it from? Betrayers. Well, I mean, for me, I guess. For me, it's from the Vault lore, because I like to block Betrayers of Kamigawa out of my brain, because I don't recognize that set was printed.
Shots fired.
But it is a legendary artifact equipment that says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, you put two charge counters on Umezawa's Jite, and has the following ability. Remove a charge counter from Umezawa's Jite, choose one. M-, bullet point. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, or target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or you gain 2 life. It equips for 2 mana and costs 2 mana, and is the most powerful equipment that's ever been printed ever.
Yeah, it was stupid.
It is the stupidest thing to have put in a set at Rare. It ruined Sealed. It won every draft that it was in. It was so powerful that not only did every deck run 4 copies of Umezawa's Jite, but based on the legend rule from back in the day, even if your deck didn't have creatures to equip to it, you still ran it as a way to destroy your opponent's Umezawa's Jites. And then the decks that wanted Jite also played some number of copies of a card called Manriki Gusari to be able to take care of opponents' Umezawa's Jite. That's how dominant this card was. It is by far my #1 modal spell of all
time. You want to talk about a warping card. Warp. It was in the Rat's Nest precon. Every precon sells out immediately. Every retailer has the rest of the precon box that just does nothing forever. Umezawa's Jite was originally supposed to add mana to your mana pool. Instead of giving -1/-1, it was supposed to add 2 generic mana to your mana pool, or 2 colorless mana, I guess. But that proved weird because, if the mana producing ability is a thing, then it can't be countered. So suddenly you couldn't stifle any of the abilities because one of the abilities is a mana ability or whatever. I don't know, something weird with rules. And so this was all coming up right before they hit the print button, and they're like, "Oh, well, let's just make it do -1/-1, go," and then off to the world it went, and here it showed up. And I can be the one person who can solidly tell you that there was a draft in which someone drafted Umezawa's Jite. Someone called it, picked up the pack, and I said, "This is it, boys. This is the one that got the Jite in it." Pulled Jite, lost. Yeah, I even got to play it. But I was so mana screwed, I just died. It was horrible. So
it wouldn't be so bad if it was and I'm no expert, but I think it's the fact that it's any damage. I could see if it was damage to the player. Mm-hmm. Okay, you've earned the right to kind of do some stuff, but
the sword,
no matter how you slice it, if you block done, you take it, you're done. That when this card hits the board, it's basically just game over. You're basically just spinning your wheels. I am never happy to see this card. I can't get an Icarid to stick for as long as this card is around. I can't get their life down long enough. Card is a nightmare. This is definitely in my what were they thinking file. Why?
It's very high up on the what they were thinking.
What were they thinking? And it's been confirmed. What were they thinking kind of thing when Aaron Forsyth was if you go back and read the Skull Clamp article and replace a few words, it's about Umezawa's Jite. That's how fast of learners we are. I forget exactly what the article was on that, but he basically admitted the mea culpa of the creation of this card. It is stupid powerful for a stupid low price.
Yeah.
And it's modal. So there you go.
Oh man, so delicious. Aaron, what's your #1?
My #1 is a card I should have played in a Vintage Super League last week. It is a card that defies the color pie with one of its modes. It is an extremely efficient answer to some of the scariest cards ever printed. It was recently reprinted with some gorgeous art, and it was also reprinted in foil, so people could finally get it in foil. I'm under the impression they couldn't before. My #1 is Pyroblast. So Pyroblast costs 1 red, it's an instant, and you can choose one. You can either A, counter target spell if it's blue, so your Ancestral Recalls, your Jace the Mayan Sculptors, the scariest, most restrictedest cards are just dealt with 1 red. Red's not normally known for countering things. This is very unlike red to have this ability. Or you can just destroy a permanent if it's blue. So again, your Jaces, the Deceiver Exarchs, some of the scary things that you mentioned, Ruben, are just, again, dealt with very cleanly for 1 red. This is beautiful. I love the new art. It was recently reprinted in Eternal Masters, and I love this card. And this is something that I should have ran when I was playing Mono Red the other day, because maybe I wouldn't have walked into so many damn mana drains like I did the other night, just one after the other. The card is fantastic, and for me, when I think of modal spells, nothing beats Pyroblast for me.
It's got that. Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of the original Ice Age art, which has Kaja Foglio and the dragon and the breath and the mage holding the staff. Absolutely fantastic. The other thing that I really, really love about this card is that you can target any spell or you can target any permanent. It does not matter because it only checks on resolution. Like Red Elemental Blast is sort of like the sort of the twin of this card, but it says counter target blue spell or destroy target blue permanent. That's different than saying counter target spell if it's blue. So if you want to get it out of your hand for whatever reason, you're able to do so.
Mentor.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just get
Monastery Mentor. Ensnaring Bridge is another reason to get cards out of your hand. So yeah, definitely. This was my number 3. Nice. And Hydroblast, Pyroblast, and then Red Blast and Blue Blast have been a staple, important part of sideboards since the game's inception. And Pyroblast in particular, with its new art and with its being so iconic and being such a big part of the metagame at all times, very, very high on my list as well.
Oh, man. So that means we get to roll around to my number 1, which, through the magic of deduction and spreadsheets, I know exactly what Ruben's number 2 is. So let's back up a little bit. Once upon a time, there were Magic player rewards. Once upon a time, Wizards would send you, like, anywhere from $10 to $15 worth of stuff. Just, hey, you're awesome. Here's a $10 to $15 bill. It's cool. Whatever. If you keep it for a while, it'll probably turn into a $30, maybe even $40, maybe even $50 bill. Right. So they would send you things like and they were all textless. They sent you a textless Wrath of God. They sent you a textless Damnation. Like, that was a thing that just showed up on your doorstep one day. It's awesome to be a Magic player. One time, they reprinted a card that has 4 different modes on it, of which people can never remember which ones they do. From Lorwyn, Cryptic Command is one of the most, for me, is just the most iconic modal spell. It literally just does everything. Like, they wanted Dismiss to just be like way better, and they already said that Dismiss is not printable, but then here comes Cryptic Command. 3 blue and a generic mana for a rare instant. You choose 2. You get dubs, okay? You counter target spell, or you return target permanent to its owner's hand, or tap all creatures your opponents control, or draw a card. How about every single one of those options is absolutely ridiculous? How about this is literally the lone spell that in Magic, if you rip 4 of them in a row, you're almost guaranteed to win whatever game it is you're playing. Like, what were you doing for those 4 turns? You tap all their guys, you hit them, you draw a card. You tap all their guys, that's the card that can do that. Cryptic Command, I have seen this card pull people out of the most stupid, ridiculous, predicaments. Like, the only way I can get out of this is if I rip Cryptic Commands, and rip, and that's what happens. And that's how you die, because Cryptic Command is amazing. Like, this card is amazing. So, back to my Magic player rewards. They sent out a textless version of this card. Why would you do that?
And they're $50 a piece now. The textless ones.
They sent $50 bills to people's houses.
Too. Yeah. That's great. This might be the card that I've lost to the most in my history of Magic, because I played so much Kithkin in Kithkin Block Constructed, and then played against so many fairies and so much Quick and Toast during that era when I was playing so much Magic. This card does everything. Like, you think all the commands do everything, but when you think about it, I mean, we talked about Kolaghan's Command and we talked about Primal Command, but they don't do everything, right? Primal Command goes and gets creatures, and puts non-creature permanents on top of their owner's library. And Kolaghan's Command deals 2 damage and can destroy an artifact. But Cryptic Command counters a spell. Everything's a spell. Or returns target permanent to its owner's hand. Everything's a permanent. Or it draws a card. Literally everything is a card. Or it taps all creatures your opponents control, which is also an insane effect, unbelievably tempo swinging. It doesn't affect everything, but that is the one that usually saved your life when you needed Cryptic Command the most. The number of games where I've gotten my opponent down to 4 life and they have a Bitter Blossom in hand, and then they just go Cryptic Command, tap your creatures, draw a card, untap. Cryptic Command, tap your creatures, draw a card, untap. Play Mistbind Click, and then I'm just dead out of nowhere is astronomical. Cryptic Command of the original cycle was one of the least talked about. Of the people were all aboard Profane Command, and people were all aboard Austere Command, and people were all aboard, as we mentioned earlier, Incendiary Command, and Primal Command and Cryptic Command were considered the weakest 2 of the 5. And then very quickly, Cryptic Command became the most powerful by far of the 5. super powerful, has dominated every format, extended, modern, not really legacy. You don't really see 4-mana counterspells in legacy too much, but it dominated standard, been reprinted a bunch of times. One of the most beloved blue spells of all time. Cryptic Command, well deserving of a #1 slot.
Beloved is a strong word.
Like I said, I've lost to it more than anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say, as somebody who has been on the other side of the Cryptic Command, there's definitely, when you're facing a control deck, there is before they have the mana for Cryptic Command, and then there's after they have the mana for Cryptic Command. The game plays very differently, and there's a very noticeable pivot when your opponent gets to that point. You know that you have to sort of tailor your gameplay a little differently because things have changed quite noticeably. This card also feels like Siege Rhino in that they always seem to have more of them. Like, you remember when Siege Rhino was standard legal and there was never just one? Yeah. They were just like Pringles where they just kept popping off. The same goes for Cryptic. They always just have them. And if they don't have them naturally, they're snapping them. And the card is just hella pesky. This has been reprinted in Iconic Masters, which should cause the price to go down even more. Yeah, the card deserves its spot for sure. I just hate facing it.
Yeah, and it's one of those, it's hard to say too much about Cryptic Command because it just does all the things. And don't we like cards that do everything? It does everything. So, that was our top 10 modal cards. We want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate for CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ruben.
Choose one. Either say thank you or say goodbye to the folks at home.
Wow. Before we go, I want to thank you and say goodbye.
All right, that's the mode you picked. So now you get to pay costs. And
wow. Man,
and splice arcane onto things.
I was not prepared for what was going on there.
4 of 9 of resolving the end of the show.
Now, Evan, I'm nice. I would let you escalate and have all of them.
Okay. Or entwine, as it were.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay.
For an additional cost. Sorry.
Moving to our final slide. That was our top 10 favorite modal cards. We want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about. We want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv/MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on Reddit at Reddit.com/r/MagicMikes, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMikes. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another top 10 episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.